Hey there, FLOSSTUBE. It's Cathy, the hands-on designer, and I'm here today to talk to you about one of my newest releases, Spring Folk, that I just released at the Nashville Needlework Market earlier in March. And I wanted to talk about one of the specific components of it. And I'm going to do this for each one because Spring Folk kicks off the series of four seasons folk. Now my model is stitched on 32 count Driftwood fabrics by Stephanie. Stephanie also does dye her colors on Even Weave and Ada, and this design is perfectly suited for both of those. I think actually I've seen some of you out there that are stitching on the Even Weave, and it's lovely. I have seen a few Ada stitchers as well, and each of these stitches, you'll notice with the band sampler, I'm going to kind of take you through it just like this, just a little slow-mo. You're gonna notice, especially up at the top, I've got some layered stitches up here. Just kind of look a little bit like wool applique. I've got some specialty stitches. I've got some fun layers in that row of carrots there. All throughout it, more specialty stitches. And again, more specialty stitches. I had a lot of fun designing this because, well, okay, face it, when you hear sampler, you probably don't think hands-on design, but it does have an alphabet in it. So I guess maybe that makes it a sampler, but this is what I call a band sampler. You've got these nice, sweet little bands. You just take little chunks of time just to kind of complete one row. And it really makes stitching them, well, a lot of fun, I think, and it go pretty quickly. You can say, okay, today I'm gonna get a sampler or band number 3 done, and you really just get a nice sense of accomplishment, and it makes a lovely piece for the season. Now these are all stitched with DMC. I've included all the information for the folk paddle that was done by Chantel's 141 Design Company. Those are available to order through Chantel or your local or online shop. I did include the information for the backing fabric that I used here on the chart, so you can order that. We also have hand-dyed rickrack, Grace Green from Lady Dot Creates. And then, as I said, this was Driftwood from Fabrics by Stephanie. My model was on 32 count. So Even Weave or Ada will work just fine. If you're like, I really can't even handle the 16 or the 32 count, the board, you can see, you get a nice enough border on the board. So actually, if you wanted to do this on a 14, that would work as well. So I think it's pretty much a good stitch for all levels and for all counts. But what I really wanted to talk to you today about was the specialty stitches. I'm going to demonstrate those here in a little bit. Just thought I would do a little intro. I do plan to do this for each of the releases as they come out, because the specialty stitches are different in all 4 designs. So by the time you get done stitching this series, you'll know, okay, got to do a little math, you'll know 12 different specialty stitches. Now there are some times that I have to make some adjustments for Ada. I specifically selected specialty stitches that would work on Ada. Now, in some cases, and we're gonna hit one right off the bat, this little satin stitch tulip motif, right away, that is not going to necessarily work the same way on Ada as it will on linen or an Even Weave. But what I've done is I've charted you an alternative. So here in a moment, I'm gonna turn the camera down and I'm gonna demonstrate the stitches. Now, in the chart, I'm going to show you briefly. This is what the front cover of your chart looks like. And we're just going to do a quick little snapshot. You'll get on one page, boop, you'll get part of your chart, and then I explain each row. I've got them numbered or lettered here on the side, and that corresponds to the row information on the side as far as what specialty stitches there are, or if there's any embellished stitches or back stitching, what colors to use for those type of things. So really, this is a great stitch along piece. And I should add that there is a stitch along going right now. It's hashtag HOD Spring Folk Stitch Along. Sarah Lehman, she's Stitchy Sarah Reads on Instagram, asked if it was okay if she started a stitch along for this. She was in my class last fall for the autumn folk piece up at the Chantel's 141 pep rally, and she really loved it. And when she found out that I was going to be doing the other seasons, she was like, oh, she was very excited because she was learning some specialty stitches. Pretty sure she was a really, a very good stitcher on linen, but she wanted to learn how to do some lacing. And let me tell you, she's done some fantastic finishes. So follow her Instagram account and her FLOSSTUBE channel too. I will link below. So when you do post, make sure you do that, because I'm following the hashtag too, so then I can see, because I'm nosy like that and I want to see your progress. So page 2 of the chart, same thing. I divided up the sampler on 2 pages, and then over here we have the directions that correspond with the numbers off to the side to give you all the necessary detail. I really tried to make it a user-friendly chart. Then on the back, of course, we always have the information, and then that's where I put the information on the fabric, the finishing fabric, cotton that I used. But now I am going to show this because I'm going to demonstrate all the stitches. These are the 3 specialty stitches that I used in this particular, in the Spring Folk band sampler. So I'm going to demonstrate them. And as you can see, I've got one here on linen, and then next to it, I have it charted for Ada. And you can see right away, we're going to do a partial Rhodes stitch. We're going to do one that I called Starry Skies. It's really, it's a star stitch. And then also a ship motif. That's that motif at the bottom. So we've got a couple that we need to make some adjustments for Ada. So I'm first going to demonstrate them all on linen, so that if you're like, I don't want the linen, I'm going to skip straight to the Ada. Just, you can fast forward through this, and I don't know, maybe I'll like wave a flag or something like that. But anyways, you can fast forward till I've started stitching on Ada to check out what you need to do. So hopefully this will help you and get through those specialty stitches. They're really not difficult. I think a lot of people get nervous and scared when they hear the term specialty stitches, like that makes it more difficult or something like that. Really not the case at all. Why did I include them? I love texture. This whole piece screams texture to me. Like I said, you've got the kind of, I like getting that applique look at the top on those top pieces. And then you can see right here, we've got the specialty. Now, a word about what I used for the specialty stitches, excuse me, is I used a number 12 pearl cotton. They come on a ball like this, and this is number 12 642. That's this is a DMC product. So DMC 642 in your floss matches DMC 642 in your number 12 pearl cotton. I used this same color in all 4 samplers. So if you get one ball, that's more than enough to complete each of the 4 samplers. And I chose this. I chose something that kind of, you're gonna say, well, it's hard to see them. Yeah, it is. That was kind of part of my design process. I wanted to add texture necessarily without adding any more visual, because visually this already really has a lot going on in it. So sometimes it's nice because your eye has these large bright moments to rest on, but then you see, you catch a little bit of that texture without really a whole lot of the added color. So your shop where you ordered the chart from should be able to get you the pearl cotton. You might even want to share a ball of pearl cotton with 1 or 2 of your besties that are doing the stitch along, because you're going to have plenty left over on this. If you're like, yeah, I really don't want to go buy that ball of pearl cotton, you can do this in just DMC floss. I would probably do it 2-strand. You're really going to want to make sure that it lays nicely. You're going to need a laying tool so that your threads lay side by side. But I encourage you to try the 12 pearl cotton. It just, like I said, it's maybe something you haven't stitched with before. It's not difficult to use at all. And it just gives it a whole different texture on these. And that's really what this series was all about for me. I did give a little bit of the background of why I call this 4 Seasons Folk, or the whole folk thing. And I guess I wasn't really planning on it, but I can kind of tell you here. I shared this story with a lot of the shop owners at market, and while it's a beautiful day out now and it's getting warmer with the spring, well, yay, spring is here. This past winter, it was pretty bitter and cold. And I laughed because I said, yeah, we watched a lot of documentaries, and we happened to catch one on our local PBS channel called Craft in America. Maybe you've seen it. And they focus on different, different craft. And in one, they talked about folk art. And I probably really had a preconceived notion of what I thought folk art was. And it was nothing that was in this particular episode. It was, every culture seems to have its own version of folk art. And so when I think of folk art, I kind of tend to think of like a lot of like the wool applique look, very, I don't want to say dull because that makes it sound awful, but very sedate, serene colors. But a lot of what I saw in this one particular episode was not serene colors at all. So I knew that I had already started to explore this whole concept of making something look like it was appliqued and cross stitch. So I kind of just started experimenting with color because I thought, well, folk art can be whatever really you want it to be as far as color. And so I wanted mine to be somewhat seasonal. So I probably went with, I don't know, I can't say like a traditional color scheme, but it is, but it is rather pastel. And as you see the coming seasons, I like to think that my color palettes, while they go with the seasons, are just a little bit Cathy. That's all I'm gonna say. Just a little bit Cathy, because I love playing with color. So, so go ahead and grab yourself. I used a number 26 tapestry needle, and this is what I'm going to demonstrate on. And you see we stitch with one strand of the pearl cotton. I've got a decent little length here. I made a knot in this end and just one strand. So I've got a little tail there. You can kind of see. I'm going to make my tail a little bit longer because I hate when my tail comes unthreaded. But we're just going to work with one strand. And I'll go ahead and start demonstrating here in a moment. But you do go ahead and do the knot like this if you're just going to practice first, because I'm going to start talking about waist knots and away waist knots and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So thanks for watching and joining me on this little tutorial. Okay, the first stitch we're going to discuss is what I have labeled the partial Rhodes stitch. And the reason why I call that the partial Rhodes stitch is that typically the Rhodes stitch works completely around you end up kind of with a square type situation. And you'll see here, this almost has more of a butterfly effect. When I first learned excuse me, the Rhodes stitch, I remember the teacher said it's kind of like you're following a road map. And that was pretty much the beginning of my love of specialty stitches, was because I thought as long as something is numbered and I've got arrows and I know where I'm going next, I can follow the road map and I can end up with something quite beautiful. So as I said, I'm going to do all the linen stitches first. So we're going to concentrate on this side. I've got the Ada stitches over here. We'll get to that next. So I have threaded up, as I said before, with one strand of the pearl cotton, and I've got a knot in the end, and I've got a little bit of my tail there. Now, if you'll notice, I have these numbered. I start with 1, and you're going to go find where the number 2 is. So that's start in the bottom left corner and come up to the bottom, the top right, excuse me. So we're going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 threads and up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 threads. Really, the most important stitch in this entire Rhodes stitch, or any Rhodes stitch, is getting that first stitch correct. Because then you'll notice in the chart, we're going to come up at number 3, which is just one thread up from number 1. And then we're going to come over to number 4, which is one thread down. So as long as we get that first stitch correct, sort of like laying a foundation, if you will, as long as we have that, we're just going to keep going in kind of we're following that road map. We're going to go in that direction. So by the time we get to that last stitch, you'll think, well, gosh, we're really layering the stitches up in the middle there. And yes, that is true. That's the whole point of this stitch, is your roads one on top of another. And maybe that's why it was called the Rhodes stitch. I don't know. But you end up kind of with this textured bump in the middle. All right, so we're going to start this one first. And I got to go. I'm not on camera, but I still need my little cheater stitches, and hopefully I can keep this on camera for you. All right, where we're going to start our thread. Now I've just got like a little cheater piece here that we're going to practice, but I want to talk to you about where I'm going to start my needle. Now remember, imagine if this is the square, we're going to start in the bottom left. So I'm going to anchor my thread over here. I'm going to go top down. This is called a waist knot. And there's two versions I want to talk to you about, just to give you a little tidbit of information. You see my knot is right there. It's resting on the surface. And my needle, I'm actually going to come up over here. And of course, we always like to start in that vertical thread if you can. All right. I'm going to bring my needle up there. And so I'm going to look on the back, and yes, I've got a long thread. I know that kind of looks like, oh, wait a minute. We don't do that in cross stitch. That's okay. This is called a waist knot. Now, what I'm going to be doing, because I'm going to work in this direction, I'll be covering that thread that I carried on the back with my stitches. You can also do a version of this, which is an away waist knot, meaning I maybe park this way up here in the corner, leaving me a long enough thread that I can clip that knot later. And then when I have some stitches in, I'll thread up that long strand up in the needle again, and I'll run it on the back underneath some of the stitches that I created. In this case, I'm not quite as worried about it since this is my little doodle cloth. I'm probably going to cover enough of it as I go forward with my stitches. All right, hopefully. So a waist knot, just a little side note. So I'm going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to bring my needle down, and I'm going to create that first stitch. I'm going to just double check, make sure I did that correctly. And I went one too far. Okay. Trust me, I'm not editing that out. I'm going to do that again. Yep, I was one thread too far. So here we go. And if you're used to counting your linen thread in, say, blocks or units of 2, do that. So just count over 3 over 2 threads, okay? So there we go. That's our first stitch right there. Whew, all right, we're going now. We're doing the partial road stitch. So if you look at the diagram, I'm going to come up 1 thread above where I came out the first time. And then I'm going to go down 1 thread below. I'm actually going to take my glasses off because I can see much better that way. Oh, perfect. All right, I'm ready to take my thread down. Okay, you can kind of see how that twists over. I'll come up, see if I can come up close. Not much to look at just yet. So we're going to come up at number 5, which is 1 thread up on the left side from where we started, and then go down on the opposite side. And I'm going to show this so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Come up at 1, down at 2, up at 3, down at 4, up at 5, and then we're going to go across at 6. And instead of counting each time, because I know I laid that first foundation thread correctly, I'm just using where I previously came up and went down and counting down 1 thread. And we're going to do this 7 times. So here we go. We're going to complete stitch number 3. And we're going to come up again. And you notice now I'm not even counting. As I said, I'm just using my previous thread, my previous length that I stitched, and just going up or down 1 thread. And you can kind of start to see how my stitch is getting raised a little bit in the middle. That's exactly what we want it to do. I'm trying not to do this too fast. Make sure that we don't share a hole. You only go in and out of a hole 1 time. And if I counted correctly, this should be our last. Yep. That should be the last leg of the road stitch. So you can kind of see how that gives, I'm trying to show you how it gives a little bit of texture. All right. And let's look to see what happened on the back. Okay, well, I didn't actually catch any of my tail here in this previous stitch. So I could actually then snip my thread right there, put that back on the needle, and then run that under a stitch. I would actually probably go ahead and complete a few more of the road stitches before I did that. You can also, if you want to, if you're doing this on your actual piece and you have some stitching up here and you want to anchor it through on the back of some previously stitched stitches, you can certainly do that as well. I just always kind of think it's fun to include a little bit more information. So that is the road stitch. Should we do one more? Why not? Let's do one more. I'm going to go 4 threads away. I don't know why, I just am. And see if I can keep you on camera here. Sorry, I'm getting used to doing this. Okay, I counted over 6. And I counted up 6. So I've got that first diagonal stitch over and up 6 threads. I'm just looking, double checking. Did I do it? 1, 2, 3. Yep, I got it right. So my foundation stitch is correct. So now I'm going to come up on the opposite side here from where I just went down, 1 thread up where I took my first stitch. Come over here and I'm going to go down 1 thread. And I'm going to do this until I get to the opposite corner. So if you just follow those numbers, it really shouldn't be too difficult to learn the road stitch. Now, as I said, this is the partial road stitch because I'm doing just part of the square. If we wanted to make it a complete road stitch, we wouldn't stop when we got to stitch number 13, 14. We would just keep working our way around the square. And here I am at my final leg of the partial road stitch. Now we've got 2 road stitches next to each other, each giving a nice little bit of texture. Now, if I was ready to end here, I could just go ahead and run my needle under the back of some stitching. And then, like I said before, I would actually go ahead and clip that, thread it back up, and run that under the previous stitches as well. All right, so I think we've got 2 of those. Hopefully that's enough to show you and give you a little bit of boost of confidence. Now, one thing I will say, I always like to start excuse me, road stitches in the same order so that we end with the diagonal line, that last diagonal line, in the same direction. Now, I'm not to say that you wouldn't ever want to switch it up and start in different spaces or spots. But what happens, especially if you're going to have a row of road stitches, you want the eye to kind of see that last diagonal line as it goes across. If you wanted to switch it occasionally and do kind of like a every other, that could be something fun as well. I happen to know that I did that with one of the specialty stitches in one of the upcoming seasons. All right, so there is your partial road stitch. So I'm going to end my thread here briefly and trim that. All right, there we go. I'm just going to go ahead and leave my waist knot for now, since we're just practicing. And I was smart, and I threaded up a few needles so that you guys wouldn't have to see me struggle threading all these needles. All right, so now we're ready to do what I called Starry Skies. This is just a fun stitch. It's one large upright cross. Start at the bottom, up to the top, and we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 threads. Then we'll come down, go down at 2, come up at 3, over at 4. So the first thing we do is we've made a big plus sign, and then we're going to do an X on top of that. All right, pretty simple, I would say. Let's do another away waist knot. And I'm going to come up over here. Oh, it's so much better if I don't have my glasses on. I can see so much clearer. Okay, so I've brought up here, and I'm going to count up 2, 4, 6, 8, and I'm going to go down there. That's up at 1, down at 2. And then I'm finding my my hole marked for number 3. You can kind of see I came down on the diagonal. 1, 2, 3, 4 threads. So I'm coming up at the stitch marked 3, and I'm going to go over 2, 4, 6, 8, and I'm making that big plus sign. All right, so there we have the base of the stitch. I love stitches, these specialty stitches that have layers to them. So now we're going to do our X over to come up where we've marked number 5. And down where we've marked number 6 on the chart. And up at 7. And it's kind of fun because this part is just a cross stitch over 4 threads. It's an upright cross over 8, topped by a cross stitch over 4. Isn't that a fun little stitch? And the way I've charted them, this was just such a fun stitch to do this with. I'm going to show you the actual sampler. The way I did it, I kind of nested. I did the first row, and then I sort of nested that second row, and it just creates some really fun pattern. I don't know. I'm weird. Can you tell I'm excited about these specialty stitches? Okay. All right. Should we do another one just in case? All right. And I'm not necessarily counting where I'm starting. I'm just going to come up at 1 again. And I count straight up 2, 4, 6, 8. And you can kind of see I'm using the needle to count the threads, and that's okay. I'm going to come down on the diagonal like that to stitch leg 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I say it's leg 3, 4 because that's what it's on the chart. I'm going to come up here and split that difference and top it off with my cross stitch over 4. And get my last leg here up at 7. And down at 8. And there we go. We've got 2 beautiful Starry Sky star stitches. All right, on the back. And we managed to catch a little bit, but I would work that in back later. I'm going to just run this under here, just for a few, run it under a few times. Trim that. I love that scissors with that little pointy tip to it. They're kind of new to me scissors. I'm just sort of working with them right now, and I'll see how much I like them. So far, I think it's pretty good. All right, so now we are set to do the ship motif. This is a satin stitch. The reason why I called it a ship motif is, well, it's really like a ship motif that's like a fairly common hardanger stitch. Excuse me, earlier in the video, I realized I call it a tulip motif. A tulip, if it was a true tulip motif in hardanger, it would have kind of a little flourish here on the end. So we're going to correctly identify this as more of a ship motif. Now, one of the things, the difference is that you'll notice as I turn the corner, I left just a little gap there. And that was definitely on purpose. What I was trying to do when I was working on the design, I've got all my needles stuck to me here. You'll notice I've got something that sort of looks like the cross stitch version of that ship motif. And then down here, I wanted to sort of mimic it. And it's a subtle thing that I left out that middle stitch right there. But it just gives it, like I said, it's all about just the different texture. Okay, so if you kind of notice that little design feature, we've got the mirroring of stitches from top to bottom. Okay, let me grab another threaded needle. I'm really congratulating myself for doing that. Except now I gotta find them all. They're all laid on the table. Hopefully the cats don't get into them. Okay, so again, we're gonna do that waist knot to anchor. Then we are going to start down here at number 1, and then we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, the important thing is to get that very first stitch anchored, and then in the put it in and then double check your count, because then your very next stitch, number 3, is going to just be 1 thread away from your first stitch. Then you're going to come up here and use that previous stitch as a guide of where to place your next stitch. And we're going to put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these before we turn the corner. Okay. So let's get going with that. All right. I want to find where I want to come up here. Okay, I'm going to come up here. Then I would say count over, hold that down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hopefully I'm staying on camera. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to pull my thread through, and then I am going to double check, because as I said, if we get that first stitch correct, everything else follows from that. Yep, I did. Okay, so you can see I've got my first stitch in place, and I'm ready to come back just 1 thread to the right. Sorry, there we go. All right, bring my needle right up, right next to it, and down next to the previous stitch, 1 thread away. Now, as far as your tension goes, if you're an in-hand stitcher, you can certainly do these. You just might want to hold your linen a little differently just to kind of open this up, kind of maybe hold it like this. Or you may want to just tuck it in a little hoop just for the specialty stitch rows. Now, I am not pulling very tight on these. You'll notice I call these specialty stitches, not pulled stitches. There are such things as pulled specialty stitches. I just don't really particularly have any for this season. I do for some upcoming season. So while I like nice tension, like I don't want this longer satin stitch to sort of be loosey-goosey in there. I do want to pull it, but I don't want to pull so tight that I open up that hole too much. Because what I really want to see is I want to see the nice satin stitch. I don't want to see the open hole. So I'm going to lay in my third. And you'll note the chart that I am kind of stitching sort of in one giant loop. I'm always coming up at the bottom and down at the top. I'm not doing what I call what I would say is I'm doing kind of more of a whip stitch as opposed to a ladder, where I would have, say, come up and down and up and down and up and down and sort of stair-stepped my way across, because that would open up some of the holes in your linen more than I would want to. And a true and proper ship motif is worked in this manner. And we want to be true and proper, right? Okay, so that sounds like the name of a chart, true and proper. All right, I've got a few here. How many did I say I was doing? 3, 6, 7, 8. All right, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm putting in number 7. And let's get that last one, number 8. Oops, sorry, hit the camera. I got to get used to working in these small spaces. So there, look how pretty that looks. If you can, the sun catch. I love the way the light sometimes goes across a nice, pretty satin stitch. All right, so now we've done this section. So now we're gonna do the upward leg or journey of the ship motif. So now you'll notice, as I said, I left out that corner row, or I guess maybe the pivot stitch. So we came up down at 16. So you'll notice now we want to come up at 17, which is 1 stitch up diagonally to the right from where we originally came up at 15. Okay, so let's see if I can find that. And that would be right there. And think of this as your secondary foundation stitch. 1, 2, 3. We want to make sure we get this first one seated correctly. And it looks like I did. So now we can use that as a guide. Like you're having a stitch along with me, all my commentary. So now we're going to continue with the satin stitch. Again, that whip motion, not a ladder motion. And remember, this is the 1 stitch. This would be, because we're going in every hole, that's what would make it difficult to do on Ada. So don't worry, we've got some adjustments for Ada to get you a pretty look as well. And I'm just continuing with this. Each satin stitch just is 1 thread away from the previous one that I stitched. How many do I have? Am I getting close? I lost track. 7. Oh, this is my last one. This is number 8. Is that how many I did? 2, 4, 6, 8. Yes. Okay, so there you go. I just love a good satin stitch. On the way just the light just kind of goes across. And then if you follow the chart, what you'll then do, what my suggestion would be is, because here we've got that first leg of the ship motif, you'll end up on this side here. Let me get the tip of the scissors. You'll end up here. Okay, that'll be your last stitch. That'll be stitch number 32. So what you're gonna, then the whole thing pivots to create this opposite side of the ship motif. So what you can do is, if you want to count over on the chart and come up here and then go down and work in this direction, you can also work from the inside to the outside. I would say pick whichever one you want to, but just work in that direction consistently. We don't want a ladder stitch type motion. We want more of a whip around and around motion for these. That's how you get them to lay so nicely. And you can see just a hair of a gap right there in the middle. And of course, all this, you can follow the charting on the master chart. And I love that. Oh yeah, I just love that. And it was such a fun thing to do, to kind of mirror these 2 stitches. And that is your ship motif. So I'm going to go ahead and end my thread. Got to pick it up off the table first. And I do that. See, we did manage to catch some of the waist knot here. And I'm just going to run this under like that. And we can trim that off. So now if I was going to I'll just demonstrate this. Sometimes I think it's easier to see than it is for me to talk about. If I was done with this and I'm like, okay, I've got to work that back in, what I would actually go do is I would trim this. That's why I love the little tips on these scissors. Get rid of your knot. And then I would thread that back up in your needle and then take it and run it through your stitches, just like that. And then you would have your thread ended and you don't have any more knot on the front. So that's what you would do. Same thing here and same thing here. So it's an away waist knot or a waist knot. I would Google either term, and I'm sure there are lots of lovely videos on them. Okay, I'm going to stop now and take the linen out of my Q-snaps and switch over to Ada. I'll be right back. Okay, and we're back, and I am loaded up with some 16 count Aida this time. I actually was able to pick a couple pieces up at Welcome Stitchery up in Blue Earth, Minnesota last weekend when I was gone up to a girlfriend stitching retreat, and we took a little side trip over to the shop and checked out. Had not been in her new location, which she's been in for a while, so I was happy to be able to pick up some Aida and to demonstrate the same stitches, but let's do them Aida style. And so now we're going to concentrate on this half of the paper. So partial road stitch, except for Aida, I felt like since we were going to have a little more white space or linen space, or in this case, birchwood space, showing, I thought we would complete the entire road stitch just to give you a little bit more texture. Like I said, sometimes we just have to sort of adjust things for Aida, and I'm happy to do that. So we're going to come out in that same bottom left corner all the way up to the top right corner, and we're going to go over 1, 2, 3 blocks and up 1, 2, 3 blocks. And again, same thing. If you get that foundation stitch complete, that sort of sets the road for all the other stitches. We'll come out next hole up at 3 and down at the next hole down from the previous stitch and work our way around the entire block. All right, I am kind of excited to see this one unravel or stitch up, I guess I should say. We don't want it to unravel. I actually haven't done this, so I'm pretty excited about it. All right, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do that away waist knot, just so my thread's anchored over here. And I'm going to come out over here. Oops, move the scissors out of the way. And we're going to come up bottom left and count over 1, 2, 3, and up 1, 2, 3. I'm going to have to admit this Aida is much easier to see when I'm trying to stitch from a distance like this and do it on camera. That is not as easy as you would think. All right, so I'm double checking and I can visually see that, yep, my first leg of this road stitch is indeed in the right place. So I'm going to commence roading. All right, I'm going to come up at 3 and down at 4. And I'll come up at 5. Hopefully you're able to see this. Down at 6. Ooh, I am liking the way this is coming out. 7. Down at 8. Up at 9. Down at 10, and your last one down at 12. Check that out. Doesn't that look really cool? Has that nice little bump in the middle, lots of texture going on. Now, the reason why I did the partial roads, initially that was my design thought on the linen, was I wanted them to look like little butterflies. You know, think about it. These are like the butterfly wings. But as I was thinking about how that would work on Ada, I felt like it would be too, I felt like it would be too slim. It just wouldn't be enough fill and give enough texture. So that's why I thought, well, no, let's commit to the entire roads. And I love it. We're going to do it again. We're going to do another one. This is kind of fun. All right, we're going to come up in that bottom left. I'm going to get brave this time and go 1, 2, 3. I counted 3 up on the diagonal. And I'm just going to keep following the road map for the road stitch. If somebody really does know why it's called the road stitch, put in the comments below. I'm sure somebody smarter than me knows. But that is really what I was taught when I was first taught this stitch. The teacher, I was in the EGA at the time in the DC area, and the teacher that we brought in said it's kind of like following a road map. I thought that was pretty cool. Oop, keep hitting the camera. I will get better as we do this. This is my first time stitching on camera like this. All right, there we go, another one. I just love it. So many possibilities. You can kind of see just the little texture. And as you can see, it might be kind of hard to see on camera. The last stitch, it's kind of like not quite the diagonal, but the last stitch, when it all ends, if you say you had a field of these or a row of these, when the last stitch all ends in the same direction, it just, it creates beautiful texture as you go, and the light catches it as it goes across the row. So there you go. That is your well, like not even the partial road stitch. We're doing the full-on road stitch for Ada. It's just lovely. Okay, so I'm going to run this under the back. And I did manage to connect some of the, grab some of the waist knot. If I was stitching a few more, I would have probably gotten enough that I wouldn't have to thread that up and run it under. Okay, next, let's grab another needle. And we're going to do that Starry Skies again. And really, this one is, there were no alterations made between the Ada version and the linen version. So we're going to come up at 1, count up 1, 2, 3, 4. So down at 2, come out over here at 3, count 1, 2, 3, 4, down at 4. And then we're going to do that cross stitch on top. This one's going to be fun. Put my waist knot in. I'm going to come up here and count 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to come down 2 on the diagonal. 1, 2. And now we have our big plus sign. We're ready to put our X over 2 on top. Another fun thing you can do with this type of stitch is make the base layer one color and the top layer another color. I know, we're just getting crazy now, aren't we? There we go. And that's our Starry Skies stitch. Let's do another one. I think that was fun. Come up at the bottom. Count up 1, 2, 3, 4. And count down on the diagonal 2 blocks. And then count to the left 1, 2, 3, 4. Down at number 4. Got that giant plus sign again. Oop, almost lost my needle. And complete the cross stitch over 2. How fun is that? I just think they just give such texture and such depth to a piece. All right. let's end our thread. And trim that. One more to go. Okay. And let's see. Yep, I counted exactly the right number. I threaded the right number of emails. Okay, so this is probably the biggest maybe change from this ship motif on linen to this ship motif on Ada. The biggest change really that I left out the corner stitch, kind of that pivoting the corner, but I included it here because, as I said, it's already going to be not nearly as dense as the Ada version, so I didn't want to skip any stitches. But I still think it gives it that look, that ship motif look. So let's try it. Gonna do my waist knot again. And we're going to come up at number 1 on the chart. And we're going to be counting over 1, 2, 3, and then up 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. There we go, our first diagonal stitch. Okay. Then I'm going to go to the very next hole. Again, we're going to go kind of in that circular motion. We're not doing a ladder stitch. When I say that, the circular stitch, we're always going to come up on the same side and down on the same side. We're not going to switch it. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these stitches until I turn the corner. Oh, I do like the way this is coming out. And you're probably thinking, well, why didn't you stitch a sample on Ada? Well, number one, I did not have Ada with me. I stitched all of the models for this series, and mostly with this one because I made a lot of changes as I was going. But as I was working on the specialty stitch, okay, looks like I'm ready to turn the corner here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, if I look at the chart, that's what we needed. So now I'm ready to work my way up. I actually fit the specialty stitches in last as I was working on these designs. This ship motif, excuse me. Oh, I almost called it a tulip motif again. I knew for sure that stitch was going to happen. Then the others, I knew about the amount of space that I was going to have, and I wanted the specialty stitch to sort of correspond to each particular season. So I had a list. I went through it in my mind. I really worked on, okay, what's going to work on linen and Ada? And then I kind of moved the stitches around where I felt like they would fit in best. Look at that. All right. So I think that actually provides very nice coverage on Ada. Okay. And I think it does the job. That's exactly what it's supposed to. Here, where's mine? See, it's not quite as dense as that, but it still just lays beautifully on the linen, and I think is just a lovely look for the sampler. All right. So I'm gonna end my thread on the back and see, whoop, I was actually able to catch quite a few of my stitches in my away waist knot or my waist knot. We're just gonna have just a little education with each of these. And don't look at it as, oh, here we go, another specialty stitch. Look at it as lots of fun. Those were all so much fun to do. All right. So let me clear this off so I can show you one more time. So there we have, we have that partial road stitch. And here we have the starry skies sort of nested. Doesn't that look like starry skies? And then we have our ship motif. And I think I laid all my threads on them, so I've got all kinds of frifts now. Just a ton of fun to do these. So thank you for joining me with this. This is my first attempt to actually stitch on camera. I promise I'll get better as we go along. And we're going to do this for each of the seasons as they come out. And as I said, each chart has 3 different stitches on it, and so you'll have 12 specialty stitches mastered by the time we're done with this series. So I hope you join me on the stitch along, HOD Spring Folk SAL right now. I'll put that below, and I'm hoping that maybe I can talk Sarah into doing a stitch along with each season as they come out. In the meantime, enjoy the stitch.